The wind howled across the icy ridges of Uranus. Snow blew sideways, covering everything in white. At the edge of a metal outpost buried in frost, a lone figure pushed a cleaning cart over the frozen floor. His name was Mace Grant, and everyone knew him as the janitor. He wore thick goggles and a heavy coat with grease stains. A mop was slung across his back like a sword. Pipes hissed steam as he passed, and alien engineers nodded without speaking. Most thought Mace was just a quiet human who cleaned messes and fixed broken pipes. Nothing more. But Mace was always watching. The alien workers of the Seraphine station believed this was a peaceful research post. They studied the strange blue ice and glowing fungi that grew only here. Humans had been invited to help with basic tasks, nothing political, nothing dangerous. Or so they claimed. Mace didn't speak much. He cleaned, fixed things, and kept his head down. But his eyes were always moving. He memorized patterns, mapped tunnels in his head, and knew which workers came and went. No one noticed when he rerouted security feeds or added code to the cleaning bots. Then one night, something strange happened. A deep boom echoed across the snow mountains. The sky, always dark and cloudy, flashed green for just a second. A signal alarm blinked on Mace's wrist, small, red, and silent. Only he could see it. He stopped moving, eyes narrowing behind his goggles. In a narrow valley, just beyond the station, a ship had crashed. It wasn't human. Mace didn't panic. He calmly returned to the storage room, locked the door, and opened a hidden compartment under his mop cart. Inside were not cleaning supplies, but a small plasma cutter, a coded data chip, and a thin black glove with strange lights on the fingers. He hadn't touched those things in years. Mace stared at them for a long moment. Then, slowly, he put the glove on. Outside, the station kept running. Aliens talked, bots cleaned, and snow kept falling. No one knew what had arrived in the valley. No one except Mace. He walked to the far side of the station where the cameras didn't work and stepped into the storm. He moved through the wind like a ghost, disappearing into the snow. By the time the others noticed anything wrong, the crashed ship had vanished beneath the ice, and 3 workers were missing. The station's alien commander looked at the camera feed, confused. How could this happen without anyone seeing? No one answered. But somewhere deep in the frozen hills, Mace found a broken hatch sticking out of the ground. He knelt beside it, brushing off the frost. A glowing symbol pulsed on the metal, one he recognized from another life. He sighed. Well, he muttered, guess I'm back on the job. Then he opened the hatch and climbed into the darkness. Deep beneath the ice, the tunnel was cold and dark. Mace's boots crunched on frozen metal as he moved through the broken wreckage of the crashed ship. It was an old model, a Zarnith scout vessel. Sharp, quiet, and deadly. But it looked like it had been shot down by something bigger. Frost clung to the walls. Loose wires sparked. The lights inside the ship flickered blue and red. Mace stepped carefully, eyes scanning for traps. He wasn't just a janitor now. Something inside him had woken up. Old instincts returned. His body moved with purpose, like it remembered how to fight, even if his mind was still catching up. He reached the control room. The pilot was dead, slumped in a chair with a burn mark across his chest. Mace leaned over, tapped a few buttons, and removed a small black cube from the control panel. The cube pulsed gently in his palm. It was a memory shard, a Zarnith data core. He tucked it into his coat. Then he heard footsteps, not slow ones, fast, angry, claws clicking on metal. Mace moved quickly, slipping through a broken door and into the ship's side corridor. A moment later, 3 Zarnith soldiers stormed in, armed and scanning the room. They wore black armor and had red lights on their helmets. One of them snarled, "Whoever took the cube is still here." Mace held his breath behind a shattered panel. His hand reached into his coat, not for a weapon, but for a small, round cleaner bot. He tapped the side 3 times, then rolled it out into the hallway. The bot beeped and zoomed across the floor, letting out a puff of foam. The soldiers laughed, until the bot exploded in a bright flash of light and smoke. Mace was already moving. He jumped out, grabbed the nearest soldier by the helmet, and slammed his head into the wall. The second turned, but Mace kicked him hard in the chest, sending him flying. The third raised his weapon, too slow. Mace threw a metal rod into the alien's face and charged. 30 seconds later, all three were down. Mace stood over them, breathing hard. Still got it, he muttered. He left the ship and headed back to the station through the storm, snow whipping around him. No one saw him return. The next day, Dr. Aria Venn was in the lab, staring at fungus samples that had turned bright red overnight. She was smart, respected, and one of the top scientists at the outpost. She didn't like distractions, but when Mace walked past her lab, she paused. Something about him felt different, not just his walk or his eyes. It was the way the room felt colder after he left. She narrowed her eyes. "Mason," she called out, "have you noticed anything strange near the northern ridges?" He turned slowly and smiled. "Just the usual, broken heaters and bad coffee." She frowned. "If you see anything, report it." He nodded. Of course. But he wasn't going to, because Ghost Protocol was awake now, and he had work to do. The storm outside was getting worse. Icy winds slammed into the station, and snow piled up against the doors. Lights flickered. Power lines groaned. The whole outpost felt like it was holding its breath. May stood in the main hallway, watching the snow whip across the windows. His face was calm, but his heart beat fast. The memory shard he had taken from the Zarnith ship was now hidden in his room, under the floor tiles. It hummed softly at night, almost like it was calling to him, and it brought the memories, flashes of old missions, orders spoken in cold voices, a name whispered again and again, Ghost Protocol. He didn't remember everything yet, just pieces, but he knew this much. He had once been someone else, someone trained to do impossible things. Someone dangerous. Now that person was coming back. Meanwhile, Dr. Aria Venn leaned over her desk in the lab, reading a strange signal pattern on her screen. She wasn't just a scientist. She was also a watcher. Quiet. Sharp. She had noticed things no one else had, like how Mace had taken the long route to the cafeteria last night, or how the broken supply bots had started moving with new upgrades, or how the security logs had been edited just slightly. She narrowed her eyes. Something wasn't right. She left the lab and found Mace near the generator room, checking a panel that didn't need repairs. His goggles hung around his neck. His hair was wet from snow. He looked tired, but alert. "Hey," Arya said. "You've been working late." "Storm's giving the systems a hard time," Mace replied casually. "I ran a scan. The signal from the crash site, it's still active." He paused. "Strange." She stepped closer. "You know what else is strange? A janitor with access to sealed doors. One who walks like a soldier." There was silence. Only the wind howling through the walls. Mace looked at her, really looked. "You're smarter than the others. And you're not who you say you are." Another pause. Then he said, softly, "You're right." Aria's eyes widened. "Who are you?" Mace didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out the memory shard. It pulsed gently in his hand. "I don't remember everything yet," he said. "But this thing holds the rest." She stared at it. "That's Zarnith tech. It's dangerous. So am I." Suddenly, the lights went out. A deep warning siren echoed through the halls. Red lights flashed. "Security breach," the intercom said. "Unauthorized presence detected in the west corridor." Mace and Arya looked at each other. Then they ran. In the dark, shadowy shapes moved through the hallway, tall, armored, and silent. Zarnith assassins. They had found the station, and they were looking for something. Or someone. Mace grabbed Aria's hand and pulled her toward a secret hatch behind the tool bay. "We're not safe here," he said. "There's a place out in the snow. An old crash site. We hide there. We plan. We fight back." "You're dragging me into something big," she said. "I know. Then let's not lose." They disappeared into the storm together, while behind them, the station fell into chaos. The storm outside raged harder than ever. Snow swirled in the air like smoke, hiding everything. Mace and Arya hiked through it in silence, each step a struggle against the wind. The cold bit at their faces. The ice crunched under their boots. But neither of them turned back. After hours of walking, they reached a steep ridge. Below it, hidden between two frozen cliffs, was the wreck of an old Terran scout ship. half buried in ice. This was yours? Arya asked, her breath misting. Mace nodded. I crashed here years ago, before I became who I am now. He led her inside. The walls of the ship were cracked and frozen, but the lights still flickered faintly. Mace pressed his hand to a panel. It scanned his palm, then unlocked a door at the back. Inside was a small room with crates, tools, and dusty old tech. This was my supply cache, he said, hidden in case I ever woke up. Arya looked around in awe. This is military grade. You were a soldier. No, Mace said quietly. I was a weapon. He showed her a hollow map of the outpost. The Zarnith are taking control. Slowly, quietly. They've replaced comms, cameras, even some bots. The others don't see it yet, but soon it'll be too late. We have to stop them, Arya said. Mace smiled. Exactly. Over the next few days, they prepared. Mace fixed old weapons. Arya decoded hidden signals in the Zarnith network. Together, they turned tiny cleaner bots into spying drones. They found loyal workers, alien engineers, and miners who had seen strange things and were ready to resist. They called themselves the Icebound. In secret, the group passed messages and tools. They planted EMP nodes around the station. They blocked Zarnith supply lines with fake malfunctions. The Zarnith commanders grew angry, but couldn't prove anything. Then Arya made a breakthrough. While analyzing the data shard, she discovered a frequency hidden deep in the signal. This, she said, is a control tone. The Zarnith use it to command their soldiers' implants. If we broadcast it, Mace said, we can break their hold. But we need a strong transmitter, Arya said. There's one place, the Thunderglint Spire. It's natural crystal, huge, and it amplifies signals. But it's far. Mace looked out at the frozen horizon. Then we go there. That night, the Resistance met one last time before their journey. We leave at dawn, Mace said. The Spire is our chance. We use it to fight back. Not with bigger guns, but with a better signal. Someone asked, why should we follow a janitor? Mace looked at them, calm and steady. Because I'm not just a janitor. I'm Ghost Protocol, and I clean up messes. They laughed, but their hearts felt stronger. As the storm settled for the first time in days, the group stepped into the snow, together. And behind them, the outpost lights flickered. The real battle was coming. The Thunderglint Spire rose from the ice like a giant crystal tower. Its sharp blue walls shimmered in the pale light. Wind whistled around it, singing like a cold flute. Mace and Arya stood at its base, their team behind them, staring up in silence. This is it, Arya whispered. If we connect our signal node at the top, we can reach every implant on the planet. Mace checked his gear. Then let's climb. They began the long trek up the icy path, using climbing hooks and magnetic boots. The higher they climbed, the colder it became. Ice cracked underfoot. The wind screamed in their ears. But they kept moving together. Halfway up, they stopped to rest in a small cave cut into the side of the spire. The others stayed outside, keeping watch. Inside, Mace and Arya sat close to share warmth. I used to think you were just a janitor, Arya said with a soft laugh. I used to be, Mace replied. Then they turned me into something else. Do you remember it all now? Enough. I know I was trained to act only if everything else failed. Ghost Protocol was the last line. We weren't meant to survive. Arya touched his hand. But you're still here. Still human. Their eyes met. For a moment, the war outside disappeared. Mace leaned closer. Before their lips touched, a voice echoed from outside the cave. Mace Grant, you always did make trouble. Mace froze. They stepped outside to see a tall figure in black armor standing on the ice. Behind him stood 10 Zarnith soldiers. Mace's face tightened. Commander Krex. Arya's heart sank. I know him, she said. He worked with my team years ago. Helped us study energy signals. I trusted him. Krex smiled. And now, I return the favor. Hand over Mace, and your friends walk free. No one else has to die. Mace stepped forward. So this is what you do now? Threaten scientists? I do what's needed, Krex said. Ghost Protocol is a relic. You should never have woken up. The air grew tense. Mace looked at Arya. Go. Finish the broadcast. No, she said. Not without you. But Krex raised his hand. and his soldiers moved fast. They grabbed Mace before he could react. Arya was forced back. One of the rebels was hit with a stun blast and collapsed. Mace didn't fight. Not yet. He looked at Arya and whispered, "Finish it." Then he was dragged away into a waiting ship. Hours later, inside a dark cell aboard a Zarnith dropship, Mace hung in zero gravity. Thin metal wires pulsed against his skin. They were trying to erase him again, wipe his mind, remove the protocol. But something deep inside him pushed back. Memories crashed into him like waves, missions, codes, faces. And one feeling stronger than all. He wasn't alone anymore. Somewhere on the spire, Arya was still fighting. And Mace wasn't going to give up. Not this time. The Zarnith command hub at Seraphine Station glowed red in the storm's dim light. Inside, Mace drifted in zero gravity, wires buzzing against his skin. He fought to stay conscious as the implant erasure began. Each memory they erased felt like a piece of his soul melting away. Still, deep inside, his will burned brighter than ever. Outside the hub, Arya raced across the icy courtyard. She carried a small transmitter, her last hope to finish the signal broadcast. Snow blinded her eyes. Sirens echoed through the halls. Rebels darted between crates, firing EMP grenades that sparked against armored soldiers. She reached the signal tower, heart pounding. She slammed the transmitter into a console and flipped the switch. Suddenly, a low pulse rolled through the air. Every soldier's implant flared red, then died. Weapons clattered to the floor as armor locks released. The Zarnith soldiers staggered, confused. The rebels cheered. Even the cleaning bots, now reprogrammed by Mace, spun and tripped enemy drones. The tide had turned. Back on the dropship, the Zarnith guards' helmets hissed as their implants shut down. Without orders, they floated aimlessly. Mace seized the moment. He ripped out the wires and pushed himself toward a maintenance hatch. His limbs shook from the erasure attempt, but his ghost instincts guided him. He hit the hatch release, and it swung open. Cold air rushed in. He tumbled into the snowstorm, breathing deeply of the frozen night. Mace helped himself up and sprinted toward the station. Behind him, the dropship erupted in alarms. He heard a blast as an EMP grenade detonated inside, disabling the engines. The ship crashed into the ice with a distant roar. Inside the station, Arya heard a commotion. She dropped her goggles. "Mace!" she shouted, running toward the main entrance. Rebels and freed Zarnith soldiers cleared the way. Doors burst open, and there he was, bloodied but alive. He staggered forward, and she caught him in her arms. They didn't have time to rest. Alarms warned of an orbital dreadnought preparing to fire on the station. Mace and Arya raced to the hangar, where a single scout skimmer waited. Rebels helped them strap in. Mace punched the thrusters, and they shot out into the storm. Behind them, the dreadnought's cannon flared, melting snow in a bright beam. The skimmer dove under an ice ledge. Mace guided it toward the dreadnought's core vent. "This is it," he muttered. "Time to end it." The skimmer's launcher fired an EMP missile into the vent. There was a deep rumble, then a shockwave of light. The dreadnought's systems died. The beam cut off. Silence fell. When they returned to the station, the sky was calm for the first time in days. Rebel workers cheered. Zarnith soldiers saluted. Arya and Mace stood together on a snow-covered balcony, watching the lights of Seraphine Station shine once more. He squeezed her hand and whispered, "We did it." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Because we did it together." Seraphine Station lay quiet under a pale sky. The storm had passed, but the mountains still trembled. Ice panels cracked and shifted. Dust and snow fell from the high walls as the station's foundation settled. Inside the medical bay, Arya lay on a cot, her arm in a sling and her forehead bandaged. She was awake, but pale and weak. Machines beeped softly around her. Mace sat beside her, holding her hand. His uniform was torn and stained, and dark circles marked his eyes. Arya forced a small smile. "You look exhausted." Mace shook his head. "Just worried about you." She squeezed his hand. "We saved everyone. The station is safe." She paused. "But at what cost?" Mace's gaze dropped to the floor. He thought of the Zarnith dropship, the dreadnought, the way he felt as the wires tried to erase him. Memories faded like mist. Some parts of himself were lost forever. A doctor entered quietly and checked Arya's vitals. Mace nodded a thanks and stepped aside. The doctor gave Arya a mild sedative and left. Arya closed her eyes. Mace stood alone by the window. He watched the mountain peaks glow in the morning light. The wrecked Zarnith ship lay half-buried in snow below. The small crater from the dreadnought's blast was still smoking. He thought of Ghost Protocol, his old life, as a weapon. The neural implant that had made him perfect, emotionless, efficient. The humans in command had offered to restore it. They said it could bring back all his skills, flawless aim, perfect memory, total control. But it would erase his heart. Mace turned from the view. He walked to a storage locker and opened it. Inside lay a small device, a memory reformatter. It glowed with a soft blue light. He lifted it gently, as if it were a fragile bird. He closed his eyes and remembered Arya's face when he saved her, the feel of her hand in his. He remembered the laughter of the rebels, the cheers echoing through the station. He remembered hope. He placed the device back on the shelf. His hand hovered over it for a moment, then he closed the locker. He whispered, "I choose to stay." That afternoon, in the central hall, the station's workers gathered. Alien engineers, freed Zarnith soldiers, and human crew cheered as Mace appeared beside Arya, now walking with a cane. A banner unfurled. New dawn, unity, and freedom. Mace stepped forward. He cleared his throat. His voice was steady but filled with warmth. "I could have been the perfect soldier again," he said, "but I would have lost the very thing we fought for. Our freedom, our hearts, and the trust we share. I choose to be human. I choose to feel. I choose to stand with you." The crowd erupted in applause. Arya smiled and leaned on his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her. That evening, May stood alone on the observation deck. Snowflakes drifted quietly outside the large window. He watched the calm sky. In his coat pocket, he felt the hidden data shard, once a trigger for his protocol. Now it was just a piece of ice and metal. He closed his hand around it and let it slip into the snowy ground outside. He heard it hit the ice below. Deep beneath, the shard lay buried, silent. Mace sighed in relief. He was no longer a ghost. He was alive, and he would never look back. Weeks passed since the battle. The snow on Uranus's ridges settled into a silent blue glow. Seraphine Station hummed with new life. Alien workers and former Zarnith soldiers labored side by side. Human engineers tested systems. Cleaner bots glided through the halls, now painted in bright colors. At dawn one morning, a Terran fleet arrived in orbit. Massive ships cast shadows across the ice. Everyone gathered on the observation deck to watch. May stood next to Arya, both in freshly pressed uniforms. He carried his old mop, now a symbolic staff, while she wore her lab coat over light armor. A broadcast crackled through the station speakers. "This is Admiral Sloan of the United Terran Council. We come in peace and support your new alliance. We acknowledge the treaty you have built. We request a meeting." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Many workers held hands or nudged each other. Mace and Arya exchanged a calm look. When the docking clamps latched with a soft thud, a delegation of officers marched through the airlock. Admiral Sloan, a tall woman with silver hair, led them. She bowed to Mace and Arya. "Congratulations," she said in a warm voice. "You have done what many thought impossible." Arya stepped forward. "Thank you, Admiral. This station belongs to everyone now. We welcome Terran guidance, but we will keep our independence." The Admiral nodded. "Understood. We offer resources and protection, but the command structure remains yours. We value your unity." Mace raised the mop staff. "Then let us begin this new chapter, together." Later that day, Mace walked with Arya along the main corridor. Walls that once felt cold now glowed with murals of victory, aliens and humans hand in hand. He paused by a window overlooking the frozen wasteland. "Can you believe it?" he asked, voice low. "From janitor to co-commander." Arya smiled and slipped her hand into his. "I always knew you were more than your uniform. But now," she tapped his chest, "you wear your heart here." He laughed softly. "And it's a lot harder to clean than floors." She laughed too. I guess we'll need a new janitor. He bowed dramatically. I know one who would be perfect. They walked on, slipping easily between allies who waved and greeted them by name. That evening, in the central hall, a celebration lit the station. Tables groaned under alien fruits, human pastries, and shared dishes from Zarnath recipes. Music played, an odd but joyful mix of Terran drums and crystalline Zarnath chimes. Mace and Arya stood on a raised platform. Arya raised a glass of glowing blue nectar. To unity, she said. To freedom, she looked at Mace. And to the best janitor in the galaxy. Mace raised his mop staff like a toast. To the future we build, clean, bright, and full of hope. The hall erupted in cheers. Music swelled. Mace let the moment wash over him. No orders. No secret missions. No hidden protocols. Just laughter, dancing, and the promise of a new alliance. Outside, the twin moons of Uranus glimmered over the mountains. Inside, hearts burned brighter than any starship flare. Mace stood with Arya, at home in a world he helped remake. He might never sweep floors again, unless he wanted to, but he would always remember that sometimes the smallest roles held the greatest power. And on Uranus's snow mountains, humanity and all its allies had found a new beginning.